With the presidential election set for November 8th of this year, voter turnout is expected to be high. Professor Dan Palazzolo says that candidates should not take rural voters for granted.
Well, I think historically the rural farm vote was critical in Virginia politics for many, many decades. Candidates need to pay attention to rural voters. They actually matter quite a bit. Our agriculture industry in Virginia is very, very important. No elected official should take the rural areas for granted, and we should all in Virginia be proud of the fact that we have such a strong and thriving agricultural and farming base.
With so many regulations coming out of Washington and the next farm bill right on the horizon, farmers and rural voters have a lot at stake in this election. Andrew Smith with the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation says many farmers are often fully engaged in the election process, knowing how important the results of an election can be to their livelihoods. Basically, they can be counted on to turn up at the polls.
We are coming up on a pretty big election, not only the presidential election, but for Congress. All of Virginia's House of Representative seats are up for election this year, but every vote counts. So often people look at Virginia, for example, and see the urbanization we've had at many spots around the state and that the rural vote is lessening. But every vote counts. We've seen that in a number of elections over the last several years, several cycles, where candidates have taken the rural vote for granted or written them off and just focused on the larger populated areas and end up losing by a small margin or not getting the votes where they needed it in the rural area to bring home a win.
With huge population bases in northern Virginia, Richmond, and Hampton Roads, Virginia has become an urban state in recent decades. But there are still plenty of other cultural areas outside major population areas. Palazzolo says rural voters are often passionate about political issues and can be a strong support base for politicians in every election.
Rural voters think beyond their basic economic needs, and they're not as inclined to want government to do things for them. Many of them are independent and believe in self-reliance on what we call cultural issues, everything from gun control to family values, to religious observation of religion.
And rural voters know that not all political issues are strictly divided by party lines. Smith says it's a good idea for rural voters in particular to dig a little deeper when deciding who will get their vote.
I would just say that, folks, they need to look at the issues, whether they're agricultural, forest, rural, what's important to them, and make their decision on who they're going to vote for. Don't just look at a party on one way or the other. Don't listen to the rhetoric they may hear in the media. Go and look at the issues that are important to them and vote appropriately.
Smith says Virginia farmers need leaders that will listen to them and work with them on issues ranging from immigration reform to expanding overseas markets for farm products. While Virginia voters supported Republican candidates for president for 40 years, Democratic candidate Barack Obama won the state the last two presidential elections. Political pundits still consider Virginia to be a swing state, where either party could win. But one thing is for sure, voter turnout will be strong in the countryside this fall. In Richmond, Virginia, I'm Dave Miller.